Welcome back to the Deep Dive. It is great to have you with us. Today, we are going to reconstruct a moment in time that I think it really haunts everyone who studies maritime history.
It really does.
It's a story that feels like it should be in a movie. It's tense, it's dark, it's full of these tragic misunderstandings, but it is all too real. We are talking about physics, really, and about the limits of human perception and what happens when two completely different worlds try to occupy the exact same coordinate in the ocean at the exact same time.
It is a harrowing story. And you're right, it does have that cinematic quality, but we have to be really careful not to view it just as a drama. It's a case study. A really important one.
Right.
We're looking at an event from, more than 30 years ago now, yet the themes, the reliance on what we see with our own eyes versus what the instruments are telling us.
Yeah, that clash.
That clash, and the clash between this massive global industry and, a hyper-local tradition, those are still the defining struggles of modern navigation. They haven't gone away.
Absolutely not. So let's orient ourselves. Let's set the scene for you. We are traveling back to February 21st, 1990. We are in Japan. Specifically, the Kisuido Strait. Now, I've looked at this on a map, and it's not just open water, is it? It looks like a funnel.
That is the perfect word for it, a funnel,
Okay.
or a choke point. The Kisuido is the strait that's sort of sandwiched between the islands of Shikoku and Honshu.
Okay.
And if you imagine the Japanese industrial heartland, cities like Osaka, Kobe, this strait is the front door.
It's the only way in.
It's the throat that all the raw materials have to pass through to feed those massive industries. And because of that, it is one of the most traffic-heavy, chaotic patches of water on the entire planet.
And on this particular morning at 05:05 a.m., so it's pre-dawn, pitch black, two vessels are about to meet in that funnel. And the size difference here is, well, it's hard to even visualize.
So absurd.
It's a classic David and Goliath scenario. In one corner, you have the Goliath, the MV Iron Kembla.
The Goliath, indeed. The Iron Kembla was a massive Australian bulk carrier. And to give you a sense of scale, we are talking about a ship that is over 280 meters long.
So huge.
If you stood it up on its end, it would rival the Eiffel Tower. And on this morning, it is loaded with nearly 130,000 tons of coal.
130,000 tons. I'm just trying to wrap my head around the momentum of that. It's not like driving a car where you just, take your foot off the gas and you slow down.
No, not at all. Not even close. A vessel like that, partially or fully loaded, it's essentially a moving island. It almost has its own gravitational pull.
Right.
The physics of it are just governed by inertia. If you cut the engines on that thing, it will just glide for miles. If you put the rudder over, it takes a long, long time for that massive hull to even start to respond.
So you can't be reactive.
You can't. It is a beast that demands planning miles in advance. You don't react in the moment with a ship like the Iron Kembla. You execute a plan you made 20 minutes ago.
And then in the other corner, directly in the path of this moving island, we have the David, the FE Kasuga Maru.
A tiny 20-meter fiberglass fishing boat. It weighed about 30 tons.
So wait, do the math for me. 130,000 tons versus 30 tons.
That's the math. It is a terrifying mismatch. And tragically, they collide. The fishing boat capsizes instantly. One life is lost.
And that's really the core of it. But the mission of this deep dive, it isn't just to look at the crash itself and say, oops. We want to move beyond the who hit who and really get into the why.
Exactly. The why is everything here.
Because on paper, this shouldn't have happened, right? The Iron Kembla had modern radar, the weather was clear, it wasn't stormy or foggy.
Precisely. Visibility was good. The technology was not just there, it was functional. So how does a ship equipped with modern radar run down a small boat in clear weather?
It's the central question.
To understand that, you have to unpack the psychology of the bridge, the failure of the human eye at night, and this really critical concept called bridge resource management, or, the failure of it.
Okay, so let's start by really getting to know the players involved. I want to dig into the Iron Kembla first. That name itself, iron, that's not just a coincidence, is it? It feels like a brand.
Oh, it is. It's a legacy. The Iron Kembla was part of the BHP transport fleet. BHP stands for Broken Hill Proprietary Company.
The big Australian.
That's the one. In Australia, they're the mining giant, the ones digging up all that red earth.
So they have their own shipping line to move it all.
Exactly. And for decades, they maintained their own fleet to move that earth. The prefix iron was their signature. It was on everything. You had the Iron Pacific, the Iron Somersby, the Iron Baron.
I see.
These ships were the arterial system of the Australian economy. They carried iron ore, coal, manganese, all the raw ingredients that fed the steelworks at Newcastle and Port Kembla in Australia, and crucially for this story, the absolutely insatiable steel industry of Japan.
So this ship, the Iron Kembla, is basically a conveyor belt connecting the mines of Australia to the factories of Japan.
That is the perfect analogy.
Yeah.
It was an industrial pipeline on the water. The Iron Kembla was built in 1986, so at the time of the accident, it was only 4 years old. It was a modern ship.
State of the art for its time.
Pretty much. It was what we call a Cape-size vessel.
Cape-size, I've heard that term. It means it's too big for the canals, right? The Suez, the Panama.
Correct. It is too wide for the Panama Canal, and its draft is too deep for the Suez Canal, at least as they were back in 1990. To get from one ocean to another, these ships had to go the long way around the Cape of Good Hope or Cape Horn.
They're the heavy lifters.
The heavy lifters of the maritime world, for sure. This ship had a deep draft, and that's the distance from the waterline down to the very bottom of the keel of over 14 meters.
So you're talking about a 4-story building, but underwater.
Exactly. But there is a design feature of these Cape-size bulkers that is absolutely critical to our story. It's all about the shape of the bow, the very front of the ship.
Okay.
To keep the deck dry in rough seas, the bow flares out. It gets wider as it goes up from the waterline.
Oh, I can picture that. It's like a cobra spreading his hood.
A little bit, yes. Or like the overhang of a cliff. This is called hull flare. It's designed to push the waves away from the ship. It's great for keeping cargo dry and the ship stable. But if you are standing on the bridge, which is located at the very back of the ship,
way, way back,
nearly 250 meters away from the bow, that flare creates a massive problem.
It blocks your view.
It creates a huge blind spot. Because the bow flares out, you cannot see the water directly in front of the ship. That blind zone can extend for hundreds of meters.
Hundreds?
Yes. You could hide a tugboat, a big buoy, or a small fishing vessel in that shadow. And the people on the bridge would have absolutely no visual confirmation that it was there.
That is a terrifying detail. We're going to have to pin that for later. So that's our Goliath. Now let's look at the Kasuga Maru. You mentioned it's a fiberglass boat, but the name Kasuga Maru sounds important.
It is a name with a lot of weight in Japan. In their maritime tradition, names are often recycled and revered. Kasuga refers to the Kasuga Taisha shrine in Nara, which is a very, very holy Shinto site.
So it's a blessing, in a way.
It's a connection to history and spirit. The name Kasuga Maru has graced many ships. There was a famous ocean liner in the 1940s with that name that was actually converted into an escort carrier during the war called the Taiyo.
So by naming this little fishing boat Kasuga Maru, the owner is sort of tapping into that deep history.
It's a sign of pride, a sign of hope for protection, maybe. But despite the grand name, the vessel itself was, well, it was humble. A 30-ton, fiber-reinforced plastic or FRP fishing boat.
And the crew wasn't a corporate team with uniforms and procedures?
No, not at all. The crew was a father and his son.
That just brings it right down to earth. It's a family business, a tragedy waiting to happen.
It is the definition of artisanal.
Yeah.
And we have to get into their mindset. The Iron Kembla is transiting. It wants to get from point A to point B as efficiently as possible. Straight line.
But the Kasuga Maru?
It's working. It's not going anywhere specific. It's going where the fish are. They drift. They drop their nets. They loop around. They often operate in these swarms or clusters with other fishing boats.
And their communication, their signals. I imagine that's totally different too.
Completely different world. They use regional signals. They use specific lights to talk to each other. Lights that might mean I'm casting my nets or I'm hauling in a catch.
Signals that make perfect sense to another local fisherman.
Perfect sense to them. But they might not appear in the international textbooks that the Australian officers on the Kembla studied at Maritime College.
So you have two languages being spoken here, literally and figuratively. One is the rigid, standardized language of international shipping.
And the other is the fluid, dialect-heavy language of the local fishing fleet. And they are about to try and have a conversation in the dark.
Let's talk about the stage where this all plays out, the Key Suido. You mentioned it's a funnel, but paint the picture of the traffic for me. Is it organized? Are there lanes?
It is organized chaos. You have a mix of absolutely everything. You have the deep-sea monsters like the Kembla. Then you have what the Australians used to call 60-milers, the smaller coastal freighters just running local cargo up and down the coast.
Okay.
Then you have ferries, tankers, and woven through all of it like bees in a garden, these swarms of fishing vessels.
It sounds like trying to drive a semi-truck through a crowded farmer's market.
That is a very, very apt comparison. And there's a regulatory complication here that is really important. We have to talk about the Traffic Separation Scheme, or TSS.
Right, I know that term. It's basically a highway system for the ocean, isn't it? A northbound lane, a southbound lane, a median strip in the middle.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Usually these are adopted by the IMO, the International Maritime Organization. When the IMO adopts a TSS, it becomes international law under Rule 10 of the Call Regs, the International Regulations for Preventing Collisions at Sea.
So it's mandatory.
It's mandatory. If you violate a mandatory lane, you are breaking international law. It's a serious offense.
But the Kisuido scheme was different.
At this time, in 1990, the scheme in the Kisuido was voluntary. It was recommended by the Japanese Coast Guard, but it hadn't been fully adopted by the IMO as a mandatory scheme yet.
So it's a suggestion, a strong suggestion, but still. We'd really, really prefer if you drove in this lane.
Right. And here is where the psychological mismatch just gets dialed up to 11. The Iron Kembla, being a prudent, massive international ship, is treating this voluntary scheme as if it were law.
They're following the rules.
They are sticking religiously to the northbound lane. They expect other ships to respect the lanes. They're expecting order in the chaos.
And as fishermen.
The fishermen know it's voluntary. And more importantly, the fish don't know about the lanes at all.
Right.
So the fishing boats are just drifting in and out of these highways, following their catch. To the Iron Kembla, the fishermen look like jaywalkers on a freeway. To the fishermen, the Iron Kembla is just another big ship passing through their office.
That sets up such a dangerous expectation. One side is expecting rules and predictability. The other side is just doing their job.
Correct. And then you add the environmental conditions into this mix. It was dark pre-dawn. The visibility was technically clear. You could see lights at a distance, but darkness hides depth. It hides perspective. And there was a northerly flooding tide.
Help me visualize that. The tide is coming in.
Yes, the tide is flowing into the strait, moving north. The Iron Kembla is also moving north. So the water itself is carrying the ship along.
So it's getting a push.
It's getting a push. The ship's engines were pushing it at about 13 knots through the water, but the tide was adding another knot or so, so its speed over ground, the actual speed relative to the seabed, was 14 knots.
14 knots, that's about, 26 kilometers per hour, which doesn't sound fast if you're in a Honda Civic, but for a ship that size.
It is a phenomenal amount of energy. Yes, remember, kinetic energy is mass times velocity squared. When you have 130,000 tons moving at that speed, the energy is astronomical. If they hit something, the ship doesn't even feel it. It just crushes it.
Okay, the stage is set. We have the giant, the local fishermen, the dark strait, the voluntary lanes, and the pushing tide. Now, let's walk through the timeline. This starts way before the crash, doesn't it? It's not just the last 5 minutes.
Oh, the errors start hours before. It really kicks off at 0300 a.m. That's when Captain Johnston, the master of the Iron Kembla, gets his wake-up call.
I always find that detail interesting. The whole rhythm of life at sea. Waking up at 3 a.m. to go to work is just normal.
It's a brutal cycle, but captains are used to it, especially for critical passages. He arrives on the bridge at 03.15. He knows the Kisuido is a tricky bit of water, and he wants to be there personally to oversee it. He takes the con.
The con? That's the conduct of the vessel. He's the driver now.
He is the sole decision maker. And right here, we see the first structural error in the bridge team. When the captain takes the con, he effectively demotes the other officers on the bridge.
How so? They're still there.
You're there, but their roles change. He tells the second officer, who was on watch, to focus only on navigation. Just tell me where we are on the chart. Then, at 0400, the chief officer comes up for his watch. The captain tells him to focus on plotting positions on the paper chart every 10 minutes.
That sounds, responsible. Everyone has a specific job. It sounds organized.
It sounds organized on paper, but think about where their eyes are. The second officer is looking down at the chart table. The chief officer is looking down at the chart table, pencil in hand, calculating fixes. Who is looking out the window? Who is monitoring the radar for traffic?
Just the captain.
Effectively, yes. The captain has isolated himself. He's the only one building a mental picture of the traffic outside the ship. The other two highly trained professional officers are essentially doing administrative work.
And they're not going to question him.
Well, this creates what we call a steep trans-cockpit authority gradient.
That's a fancy term. Break that down for me.
It just means the captain is up here looking down, and the officers are down there, afraid to speak up or challenge him. If the captain says, "I've got it," you don't argue. You keep your head down and you do your plotting.
It creates a vacuum.
A vacuum of information right around the captain. He thinks he sees everything, and no one is there to check his work.
And where is he standing physically on this big bridge?
He positions himself at the center window. He has his binoculars. He is conning the ship visually.
Visually, in the dark. But you said they had radar, modern radar?
They had excellent radar, 2 separate sets, both equipped with ARPA, that's automatic radar plotting aid.
We need to explain ARPA because it sounds like magic, but I know it's just physics and math.
It is a brilliant, brilliant tool. A standard radar just shows you a blip. There is something out there. But ARPA tracks that blip over time. It measures the distance and bearing every single time the antenna spins around. After a minute or so, it calculates a vector. It draws a line on the screen that predicts where that other ship is going, and it gives you 2 absolutely critical numbers, CPA and TCPA.
CPA, closest point of approach.
Exactly. It tells you, if you both keep doing exactly what you are doing right now, this ship will pass 0.5 miles from you. Or 0.0 miles, a collision.
And TCPA.
Time to closest point of approach. You are going to collide in 12 minutes.
So let me get this straight. The captain has a computer screen right next to him that can essentially predict the future. It can tell him, with data, Captain, you're going to hit this boat in 12 minutes.
Yes, that is exactly what it does. But here is the fatal catch.
Yeah.
You have to look at it, and you have to acquire the target.
You have to tell it what to look at.
Right. And the investigation found that while the radars were running, the captain wasn't relying on them. He was relying on his seaman's eye. He was looking at little lights in the dark and doing the trigonometry in his head.
But why? Why ignore the machine that's designed to prevent this exact thing?
It's a combination of things. It's the inertia of information we talked about, and a bit of old-school pride. Many experienced mariners of that era trusted their eyes more than the box. They felt they could judge the aspect and movement of a ship better.
Which, to be fair, in broad daylight, they probably could.
In daylight, maybe. But at night, the eye is so easily fooled, your depth perception just vanishes. A bright light 5 miles away can look exactly the same as a dim light 1 mile away.
So he's guessing. He's making an assumption.
He is making an educated guess, but it is still fundamentally a guess. And the machine next to him had the facts.
Let's move to 04.41 a.m. This is about 24 minutes before the collision. The clock is ticking down.
The Iron Kembla alters course to 003 degrees. True, they're lining up for that voluntary traffic lane, getting into position, and this is when they spot the Kasuga Maru.
They see it 3 miles away. That seems like plenty of time to react.
In the open ocean, 3 miles is an eternity. You could go make a coffee. But here, in this constrained water, the confusion starts immediately.
Okay, what does he see?
The captain looks through his binoculars, and he sees lights. He sees a green side light.
Green means starboard. That means he's seeing the right side of the other boat.
Correct. If you see green light, it means the other vessel is presenting its starboard side to you. It should be moving from your left to your right across your bow.
Okay.
He also sees some white accommodation lights, just random lights from the cabin windows. But, and this is the absolute key to the whole misinterpretation, he does not see a masthead light.
Navigation lights are a specific language. What is a masthead light supposed to tell you?
A masthead light is a bright white light placed high up on the center line of the ship. It's visible from the front and from the sides. It tells you 2 critical things. 1, I have a power-driven vessel. I have an engine.
Right.
2, and more importantly, it helps you judge the angle, the aspect of the vessel. If you see the green light and the white masthead light is directly above it, the ship is broadside to you. If the white light is to the left or right of the green, you can tell if it's coming towards you or moving away.
So without that white masthead light, the green light is just a floating dot. You don't know the angle. You've lost the 3D perspective.
Exactly. So the captain was confused. He thought, well, maybe it's a sailing vessel. Sailing boats don't show masthead lights when they're sailing. Or maybe it's just a very small power boat that's not properly lit.
So what was his conclusion? What was his mental model?
He formed a visual opinion, a guess. He estimated that this green light was crossing his bow and would pass about 1 mile clear ahead of him.
1 mile clear. That's his mental model. I'm safe. He's crossing way in front of me. No drama here.
That was the model he locked into. But remember, he didn't walk the 5 steps over to the radar to verify it. If he had used the ARPA, the computer would have plotted the vector and told him in no uncertain terms.
Captain, that target is not crossing 1 mile ahead. It is on a collision course.
Because the computer doesn't care about the lights, it just sees the physical object. Exactly. The radar sees the hard radar return from the boat's engine block, or its corner reflector. It deals in facts, not interpretations. The captain was dealing in visual opinions.
And we get to ZO 500. The approach continues. We are now just 5 minutes from impact.
And the situation changes. The green light disappears.
Okay, so he saw green. Now he sees nothing, just the white lights.
He sees the white cabin lights, but the green navigation light vanishes. Now put yourself in the captain's shoes for a second. If you are watching a boat on your starboard bow and its green light disappears, what do you logically think happened?
I'd assume it turned away from me, turned to its left.
Exactly. You'd assume it turned to port, showing you its stern. And that is exactly what the captain interpreted. He thought, okay, he's seen me, he's turned north to run parallel with me, he's tucking in alongside me, risk over.
But that was just an illusion, a misinterpretation.
It was a fatal assumption. Small boats pitch and roll in the sea. The visibility angles of those little navigation lights can be tricky. Or the boat might have just turned slightly, just enough to obscure the light from his viewpoint.
So the captain thinks the boat is now running parallel to him.
In reality, it was still crossing his bow, just at a much shallower, more dangerous angle.
So believing he is safe, but wanting to be, a good neighbor on the water, the captain makes a move.
He does. He orders hard a starboard. He begins to swing the massive iron Kembla to the right. He thinks he is widening the distance between him and the fishing boat. His logic is, I'll go right, give the little guy some more room on my left.
It sounds like a courteous, professional maneuver.
It would have been if his mental picture of the situation was correct. But because he was wrong about where the boat was and what it was doing, he was actually turning into the collision.
Oh, man. So we're at 05.01. The order has been given. The giant ship is beginning its slow, unstoppable swing to the right.
And then the Kasuga Maru does something that changes everything. Suddenly, a light comes on. Not a green light, not a white light, a flashing amber light.
Flashing amber, like a construction vehicle on the highway.
Exactly that kind of light. Now, under the international call regs, a flashing amber light is usually reserved for very specific things like submarines or hovercrafts. But in Japan, this is a very common local signal.
What does it mean there?
It means I am fishing. It's used by these boats to signal to everyone else, stay away, I'm working, my nets might be out, I'm not very maneuverable.
So the fisherman finally flips the switch. He's saying, hey, big guy, I'm here, I'm working.
He probably saw the massive dark shadow of the iron Kembla looming over him and thought, I better make damn sure he sees me. But the effect of that light was blinding. The glare from that flashing amber light suddenly lit up the entire deck of the fishing boat.
And in that flash of light, the optical illusion just shatters for the crew on the Kembla.
Completely. They suddenly saw the reality. They saw the boat wasn't running parallel. It was right there, dangerously close. And then, in that moment of realization, the fishermen panicked.
The final maneuver.
The iron Kembla had blown its whistle, one short blast, when it started its turn to starboard. That's the rule. One short blast means I am altering my course to starboard.
And that's a loud horn on a ship that big.
It's a bone-shaking, terrifying sound in the pre-dawn quiet. The fisherman likely heard that deafening roar, looked back over his shoulder, saw this mountain of steel turning toward him, and his instincts just took over. The classic rabbit in the headlights effect.
What did he do?
He altered his course hard to starboard.
Oh, no. So the Kembla is turning right to starboard, and the little fishing boat also turns right to starboard.
They mirror each other. They turn directly into a perfect collision course. If the fishing boat had turned left or even just stayed straight, the Kembla might have swung its stern past him. But by turning starboard, he cut directly across the Kembla's swinging bow.
And this is where the physics and those design flaws we talked about align perfectly for a disaster, the blind spot.
That's it. The Kasuga Maru crosses the bow, and once it gets within about 250 meters of the ship, it disappears.
It just vanishes from their view.
It enters the shadow of the hull flare. The captain is standing there on the bridge looking down, and he can't see the boat anymore. He knows it's there. He knows he is about to hit it. But he is visually flying completely blind.
That is a distinct kind of horror, knowing you are about to crush something that you cannot even see.
The master yells, hard a port!
Yeah.
He's trying to swing the stern of the ship away. He's trying to fishtail the back of the ship away from where he thinks the boat is. But you cannot defy that kind of momentum. The ship is doing 14 knots. It's just sliding through the water on its planned course.
EO 5.05 a.m.
The lookout on the wing of the bridge looks down and shouts. He sees the upturned, smashed hull of the Kasuga Maru sliding down the starboard side of the ship in the wash.
It's over.
The collision has happened. The boat has been rolled over and crushed into that massive, unfeeling bow.
Let's talk about the immediate aftermath. You're on a ship that takes miles to stop and turn. You can't just pull over to the shoulder.
No, this is the agony of the post-collision moments for a large ship's crew. The iron Kembla has to slow down, which takes a huge amount of time and distance. They have to assess their own damage. They have to turn around, which, in a narrow strait full of other traffic, is a dangerous maneuver in and of itself.
A huge undertaking.
And then they have to launch the rescue boat. The whole process is slow and deliberate.
They did mobilize quickly, though, according to the report.
They did. Once the impact occurred, the crew acted professionally. They got floodlights on the water. They got the rescue boat launched. They found the skipper of the Kasuga Maru. He was alive, clean to debris in the cold water. They pulled him out.
But the son...
The son was never found. He went down with the boat.
That is the human cost of this. We talk about vectors and hull flares and call rugs, but ultimately, a father lost his boy in the dark.
That is the brutal reality. And that tragedy is what triggered a very intense, very thorough investigation by the ATSB, the Australian Transport Safety Bureau. And they did not hold back in their findings.
So let's look at those findings. They placed the blame on the iron Kembla.
They placed the majority of the blame squarely on the iron Kembla. The primary finding was, and I'm quoting here, negligent use of technology.
That's a heavy phrase. Negligent. That's a legal term.
It is legally damning. They cited a clear violation of Call Reg Rule 7. Rule 7 is titled Risk of Collision. And it states very, very clearly that every vessel shall use all available means appropriate to the prevailing circumstances to determine if risk of collision exists.
And all available means absolutely includes that expensive radar system they chose not to use.
It's the definition of it. You cannot choose to use just your eyes in the dark when you have a functioning radar that could save a life. The investigation concluded that the captain relied on a guess when he could have had a measurement. He failed to properly monitor the position and movement of the target.
And what about the bridge team, the silent officers who were busy plotting on a chart?
That was the second major finding, a catastrophic failure of bridge resource management, or BRM. The report painted a picture of a completely dysfunctional team, not because they were fighting, but because they were too passive.
The steep gradient.
The steep gradient. The captain was acting as a solo operator. The officers were just bystanders. The ATSB noted that if just one of those officers had walked over to the radar, acquired the target and said, "Captain, the ARPA shows the target is at 0.8 miles and closing fast," the accident likely would not have happened.
Silence kills.
In this environment, it absolutely does.
Did the Kasuga Maru get any blame in the report, or was it seen purely as a victim?
The investigation did assign some contributory negligence to the fishing boat. They weren't seen as blameless. The missing masthead light was a significant violation of the call regs.
A critical piece of information that was missing.
If that light had been working, the Kembla captain would have understood the aspect, the angle of the boat much, much earlier. The whole initial misunderstanding might have been avoided.
And the final panic maneuver.
The erratic turn back to starboard was also criticized. It was panic, yes, but it was also the final nail in the coffin.
There was also a weird legal detail mentioned in the report about a green flashing light on the iron Kembla itself.
Ah, yes. This is a fascinating example of how local rules can clash with international expectations and create confusion. The iron Kembla was displaying a green flashing light high up on its mast.
What is that signal? What's it for?
In the Japanese inland sea, which is nearby but legally distinct from the Key Swedo, a green flashing light is a specific signal authorized by local Japanese law. It basically means, I am a huge vessel over 200 meters long. I have priority. Everyone gets out of my way.
Okay, so the Kembla's crew thinks, I've got the green flasher on. I'm the king of the road here.
They might have felt that way, yes, a sense of entitlement. But technically, legally, the Key Swedo is not the inland sea. The local pilots had told the captain to use it as a matter of custom, but it didn't actually grant him legal right-of-way in that specific strait under international rules.
So it's a false shield. It's a sense of security that isn't real.
It's a safety blanket that didn't actually offer any legal protection. It might have even added to the fishermen's confusion. Why is that giant ship flashing a weird green light at me?
It just adds another layer of fog and misunderstanding to an already bad situation.
Exactly.
I want to zoom out a bit. This happened in 1990. But this wasn't the only bad news for BHP shipping in that era, was it? This seems like part of a pattern.
No, it was not. The 1990s were a decade of reckoning for BHP shipping. You had the iron Kembla collision in '90, And then just 5 years later, in 1995, you have the grounding of the Iron Baron.
I remember that name. That was the big oil spill in Tasmania, the penguin rescue, right?
That's the one. The Iron Baron wasn't a collision, it was a grounding. It hit Hebe Reef, it spilled tons of heavy bunker fuel. It was an absolute environmental catastrophe.
So within 5 years, you have a fatal collision caused by human error and a massive oil spill caused by another navigational error.
These two events, back to back, forced a complete and total overhaul of the company culture and really the industry culture. Before this, the industry was very old school.
What do you mean by that?
The captain was the master under God. His word was law. If he said turn, you turned, no questions asked. Safety was seen as good seamanship, an individual trait you either had or you didn't.
And after?
After these disasters, the industry pivoted hard towards system safety. We saw the introduction of the ISM code, the International Safety Management Code. This code says that safety isn't just about having a good captain. It's about a company-wide system.
Right.
It's about checklists, procedures, audits. It's about creating a culture where a junior officer is not just allowed, but is required to speak up and challenge a decision if they think it's unsafe.
It moved from a culture of heroes and individuals to a culture of checklists and teamwork.
Yes. And while checklists can sound boring and bureaucratic, they save lives. They're designed to stop the Superman captain from making a unilateral, fatal mistake.
You also mentioned that the insurance guys, the P&I clubs, they changed their advice after this too.
Oh, absolutely. The UK P&I Club, one of the biggest maritime insurers in the world, now issues very specific warnings to ships' captains about operating in Japan. They basically tell them, look, when you're in these waters, you have to throw the standard rule book out the window.
Really? That sounds extreme.
Well, not literally. You still have to follow the coal regs. But their advice is born from hard experience. They say, assume the fishing boats will not give way. Assume they don't see you. Watch for that flashing amber light. Do not rely on your right-of-way to save you from a collision.
That is advice that is written in blood.
It is. It is the legacy of the Iron Kembla and the father and son on the Kasuga Maru.
I want to spend our last few minutes on the why, the deep human element here. We talked about visual versus radar, but let's go a bit deeper. You called it the inertia of information.
Think about how the brain processes risk. When you look out a window, you are gathering data, you're interpreting it, and you're making a decision. That takes cognitive load. When you are tired at 4 o'clock in the morning, that processing slows right down. And you tend to stick to your first assumption. The captain's first assumption was, it's crossing clear. His brain wanted that to be true because it was the simplest answer, so it started to ignore the subtle signs that it was wrong.
It's confirmation bias. In the dark, on the water.
Exactly. Radar, on the other hand, is just cold, hard data. It updates every few seconds. It has no bias. But if you don't look at it, you are stuck in your own mental loop. The Iron Kembla captain was trapped in a loop of, I think it's safe, until that flashing amber light shattered it, and by then it was too late.
And the conning trap, the idea that the captain feels he has to do everything himself.
It's the curse of the capable leader, in a way. Captain Johnson was, by all accounts, a good, experienced seaman. He wanted to ensure the ship was safe through this tricky passage, so he took the wheel, he took the lookout duty, he was making the radio calls.
He became the single point of failure.
By doing everything, he overloaded his own cognitive bandwidth. He became the bottleneck for information. A modern bridge team needs a manager, a coordinator, not a micromanager who does every job.
And finally, that idea of structural blindness. The hull flare, that's not human error, that's a design choice.
It's a trade-off. We build ships to carry massive amounts of cargo as efficiently as possible. We flare the bow to keep them dry and safe in heavy seas. But in doing so, we engineer a zone of death right in front of the ship for small vessels.
Yeah.
It's a known design flaw that requires operational compensation. You have to know you are blind for the first quarter kilometer in front of you, and you have to drive accordingly.
You have to assume there is something in that shadow.
Always. You have to navigate for what you can't see, not just for what you can.
This has been a heavy deep dive, but a really necessary one. When you boil it all down, you have a massive ship acting on a guess and a small boat acting on panic. And the result is just inevitable tragedy.
And the ultimate frustration of it all is that the tools were there, that technology existed on that bridge to prevent this. But technology is absolutely useless if the human culture on the bridge doesn't support using it.
That's the takeaway for me. We live in a world that is getting more automated every single day. We're talking about AI, self-driving cars, automated trading systems. But the lesson from the Kisuito in 1990 is still completely true.
And what is that?
That the most dangerous component in any complex system isn't the machine. It's the human who ignores the machine because they think they know better.
The human who trusts their visual opinion over the hard data. That is a danger that will never go away no matter how advanced our ships or our systems become.
So to our listeners, whether you are driving a car in traffic, managing a team at work, or just navigating your day, ask yourself, am I looking at the radar or am I just guessing in the dark?
Check your blind spots.
Thanks for listening to this deep dive. Stay safe out there.